Hey guys, welcome to the latest episode of Beyond the Tape. This one is a tech talk episode where me, Mick Williams and Lockie McKillop sit down and talk all things tech. On this one we kind of focused on the drivetrain, chains, cassettes and everything else. Before we move on too far, let me just thank some sponsors. First up we've got FE Sports. They are amongst the industry leading experts in sporting products, distribution, wholesale, and their customer service is some of the best in Australia and New Zealand. They're the official distributors of brands such as 100%, Pirelli, Wahoo, Aftershokz, Theragun, Wera, Absolute Black, Galfer Bike, and even more. So if you can't find something from those, it's better to jump over to another one of our sponsors. NSDynamics, those guys are the suspension service company that you want to use in Australia. They offer one of the best servicing packages I've ever come across, the Hyper Performance Tune. They use Racing Brothers seals, better oils, better air, better everything, and they make your bike feel better than new. So make sure you hit them up via the website and book it in now because they're still servicing even through these crazy times. We've also got Franked Mountain Bike Apparel. They are a performance brand making mountain bike apparel out of Western Australia. Some of the best kit I've ever worn. Really lightweight, real stretchy. It feels like you're riding naked without having to ride naked because I'd be in jail and a lot of people would be scarred for life. Anyway, if you want to ride well and feel good while doing it, hit up Franked and they'll get you sorted. Two Up Bike Co. have been supporting us for a while now. They do DeMonte Tech lubes, they've got Factor hubs and components, Shimano saddles and Noble rims. So if you want a real sick wheel set or some pedals that are going to feel like your feet are glued to them, then hit those guys up and they'll get you sorted. Dirt Surfer mudguards have been keeping my face clean-ish, except for this dirty mow. Those guys use 100% recycled materials. All their guards are 100% recyclable and you can even get some custom designs. Lastly, for the Tech Talk episodes, we have a special sponsor in the form of Lead Out Sports. They are one of Australia's best tool distributors and guys when it comes to specific mountain bike or bicycle tools. They stock brands like Pedro's and Abbey Tools and a bunch of other stuff like Smooth Lube and some really cool tools. Thankfully, they've come on board and they've helped us out with some Pedro stuff for prizes. So if you're lucky enough to ask a good question, then we'll select it as the best and you'll get a sweet $100 gift voucher towards some Pedro stuff. Anyway, thanks for listening to all that. Hopefully you enjoy this episode about drivetrains and chains and cassettes. We go pretty techy on a few things. And yeah, hopefully it helps you out. As usual, grab a beer, grab a water, grab a wine, and enjoy the episode.
Yeah, let's do it.
Mick and Lockie, welcome to the podcast again for Tech Talk 3. You guys keen?
Hell yeah.
Keen as, mate. Always keen for chat.
It's been we've been chatting for the last 45 minutes, an hour about shit. And for those that didn't hear it, there's lots.
We can't disclose.
Sorry?
Shit we can't disclose.
Yeah, there's some real cool stuff coming from some really cool people.
So we now have a 5-minute podcast left because we're running out of time.
got all the time in the world. I don't know about you guys. Yeah. What's been happening? You guys been up to much?
I think we've both been super busy, hey? I mean, yeah, WIP's been busy. PSI looks like it's been real busy, so.
Sick.
Yeah, life's been good. Busy. I love busy. It's sick. I've been riding my bike a bit in the mornings. Yeah, life's good.
You guys still in lockdown over there?
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm out because we're classified as rural.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah, Torquay's rural. Same with Geelong, so I can come to work. Well, I could come to work during lockdown anyway because we're manufacturing. But yeah, can kind of get around free. But yeah, I feel for you guys, Lockie.
Just now, mate. I actually feel more bad for I was messaging a few people in the ACT and shit today. I feel worse for them because they're not used to it. Whereas we're just used to it now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's actually a shock for a lot of other people. So it's all right.
Yeah.
Got to do it.
Yeah.
Sick. Yeah. Well, I'm in SA, so we call it Freedom Land down here in the new America. Yeah, for this one,
Call it Texas. Eh?
yeah, can't know. Moonshine everywhere. It's great. For this one, we thought it might do something special based on what we were just talking about that can't be disclosed. But if anyone's been looking at Instagram on WRP, they might know what I'm hinting at. But I thought we might chat about drivetrains for this one a little bit.
Yep, cool.
Down.
Everyone wants to talk about suspension, like all the time, for some reason. But every time I hop on someone's bike, I notice like their gears don't shift correctly. They've got like gritty chain, derail hangers out. Like, do you guys notice this? And why do you think like people are not kind of taking care of this stuff?
Well, I think
first. Oh, no, you're stepping first. Go.
no. Well, I was going to actually step in and say I think that Lockie's like the king of clean chains, because I always see that you're doing like stories and whatever on cleaning your stuff. And all I was going to say is I think it's so like it's such an easy thing to neglect. And I think you got to kind of be proactive about taking the time to clean your drivetrain, because it's so easy just to neglect. It's kind of sticking there behind you and you don't necessarily look at it all the time until you do, and it's half fucked and you're like, oh shit. So like I've been trying to be really good over the last couple of years with my drivetrain, particularly with, as a lot of people would have seen, like the center hub stuff. But I'll be the first to say it's easy to neglect, but I think the best person to talk about keeping their drivetrain clean is you, Lockie, because you're all over it.
I just think it's an easy one to do. Like, as you said, it's an easy one to neglect, but it's a really easy one to do. And like, I think the benefits are more understood and seen in like road bikes because of power meters and watts and all that kind of stuff. But there's a whole host of other things that really go into it, like wearing your chain out and wearing your cassette out. And like some cassettes now are really expensive, but if you take a little bit of time every week and clean them, they can last forever. Like, it's pretty cool. So like, I do see it all the time. Like, you get to a race and you're exactly right, Darren. Like, I want my fork service, and then you look at the bike and like the drivetrain's haggard and you're like, well, hold on a minute. Like, suspension's going to make you go faster for sure, but there's some other like 1 to 10% going on at the back there that, could be a bit more benefit. I think even just quietness of drivetrains is a big benefit of cleaning your stuff. You have a bike clapping around behind you, you just get to focus on the bike. So it's neglected all the time. As to why, I think it's just a laziness thing, or maybe a lack of education as well. Drivetrains can be scary because there's a lot of specific tools. You know what I mean? And maybe you bumped it once and then you tried to fix it, or you tried to screw the screws in because they look like one sticking out, and then your gears stop working. Like, people are scared of it a little bit. So, it's interesting. I do see it all the time, and I reckon it's either lack of education or laziness.
Yeah, I think, as you say, like the tuning of a rear derailleur seems scary. And I guess that's just because people don't take the time to mess around and fuck it up. Like, I remember when I was a kid, you just mess around until it worked, and I'd mess it up again and go and do it again. And you work out what the screws and the cables do, but it can be an expensive mistake.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. I don't understand why people don't clean it, but like as Mick said, you've got some pretty quirky ways of keeping your chain and cogs clean and quick. How do you go about it?
I think there's quirky ways and there's not quirky ways, and they all work. Like that we said, and I've got a whole host of show and tell tonight. This silver doodad behind me is an ultrasonic cleaner, and that would be the extreme of cleaning, right? I don't expect people to do that. I just like having stuff, and I pop the chain off on that every now and again. I don't use it all the time, just for the big cleans and for the cassette, and that will put a whole bunch of vibrations through the chain in a degreaser and clean it up for me as I'm doing other stuff. That's not my go-to every time though. Like I just have a Park Tools chain cleaner. had this one for probably 4 years. I'm pretty sure I got it when I started working at SRAM. It's a little bit haggard, but this is the metal one, so it lasts forever.
Oh, gee.
But just that bit of degreaser is awesome. I do 1 round of degreaser with that. I was saying before, like my big favorite at the moment is the crush stuff. 1 with the crush and then 2 with boiling water after, and that honestly will make your chain come up really nice and clean. And then the same, just like a brush on the back, or a toothbrush. You don't need to have a fancy brush. This one I've had for ages, like probably, I think Matt from Crush gave me that kit 3 years ago at Threadbow. And a bit of degreaser just to clean up the cassette, and just scrub around it. Try not to spray the things. I think there's a question a bit later on with free hubs, but you don't want to spray them because you'll kill that bearing. And just give it a scrub down and make sure you've got water flowing to kill the degreaser, right? Because water will dilute the degreaser and stop those, degreasing properties from occurring. If it's citrus based or bike, if it's a gnarly petrol thing, it won't be hydrophobic. But and make sure you use bike stuff. Don't use kerosene. Please, no one use kerosene. It's evil. It's not made for bike chains. That's my rant.
Yeah, I think the other thing too is, and I could be, can be corrected on this because I think this is like the psychology a lot of mountain bikers, particularly kind of young kids. But I think a lot of people, their mentality behind it is, oh well, I'm probably going to smash it on a rock in 2 runs anyway. So why am I going to spend all the time and money fixing my half-cooked derailleur if I could replace it and in 2 runs I'm going to cook it anyway? I think that's kind of part of the mentality, but I don't really know how you fix that other than to have better drivetrain. And that's where before this we were talking about gearboxes and all that type of stuff, and but without going down that rabbit hole. But I think that's half the reason to it as well.
Especially in downhill, right? Like it's a disposable product in a lot of senses.
That rabbit hole is poised and waiting to go down. It's down further in the list. It's ready to. Do you do any, how about you, Mick? Do you do anything special, or you just degrease it, clean her up?
So basically, I've got the same. I've forgotten even what they're actually called now, Lockie. But like your park tool,
chain cleaner.
It goes over the top.
Chain cleaner. I don't know what it's called.
I think they've got a specific name. I think who is it? Muck Off. I think they've got like a specific name for it. But anyway, basically, I've got one of them, and that's just kind of the go-to as well. Like for me, nothing super special like your ultrasonic cleaner, but for sure, super important.
Like those things are sick, right? Like that cost me. I bought a really cheap one off J-Car. It's like $75 for chains. It was awesome.
What?
Like they're really good, but it didn't fit a cassette in, and I was doing some stuff at home and I wanted something bigger. That was only $350 for that machine. Like it's a lot, right? But I also have a lot of bikes in itself. But they're not crazy at the top. The problem with that is you got to take your chain off, which means you've got to replace the power lock every time. That's what annoys me. But that being said, I probably use that once every 8 times I clean my chain like that. So you don't need to use it every time.
And I think it's like, as sort of I first said, I think it's one of those things that you've really got to be proactive with as well, because like once your derailleur is cooked, it's cooked. You can't bring it back. It's not like, it's not like a set of forks. It's like you can service it, change a pair of seals or whatever. Like if it's cooked, kind of fucked. So I think, being proactive. Is,
same with chains, really right? Like if chain wears out prematurely because you haven't cleaned it, which is what happens, your gears go out. I think it's the same thing, right? Mickey? You're like, oh, the derailleur's screwed. It's like, well, actually the derailleur's fine. Your chain's just flogged, and because you've never cleaned it. I mean, like it's such a little thing, but I think you're right. The emphasis is put on other parts of the drivetrain than the boring bits. The chain's boring.
And it has that. It's certainly, I think the other thing too is like, it's certainly a component on your bike where you've got so many moving parts that are all dependent on one another, is that it's a bit of a domino effect. Like if your chain's fucked, all of a sudden, like if you don't attend to it pretty soon, all of a sudden your front chain ring's also going to be screwed. Your cassette and your derailleur are going to be screwed. So it's like just got this compounding sort of effect, which unlike any other sort of component on the bike, I think, that's what makes the drivetrain sort of different is just got so many dependent components.
Yeah,
I think you can see it with the drivetrain too, which is the complexity. Whereas suspension, like your point with the forks is kind of true, but then kind of not. Like you take the thing apart. Like for me, I take the thing apart and you see the iceberg of damage that's in there. So they can wear just as quick. You just don't see it.
I guess my point was going to be is that like obviously your forks and whatever have got built-in service points where your seal is going to work out, like wear out after us, and you can replace the seals once they start. So let's just say hypothetically your seal leaks a little bit, you can replace the seal and maybe not get away with having to do a full service. Whereas with say your derailleur or whatever, like once it starts to go, because it's got so many dependent parts, like the whole thing could be just shagged now.
Yeah, no. Drivetrain, the hardest thing is there's no official service intervals, right?
And that's exactly it, yeah.
Yeah, and your chain, like, you're seeing it more now with e-bikes. People are wearing through stuff quicker because there's a consistent amount of power being put through the thing all the time. But, if you look at road drivetrains, it's like, well, how long's a piece of string? Because a pro rider will wear a chain out way before a normal rider does because of the numbers they're putting in and the stress they're putting into it. So that's the best point, I think. I've never really thought about it. There's no service interval on drivetrain. So it's ambiguous, right? You just got to set, I'm going to clean this once a week and it's going to be better than not.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
For those playing at home, Lockyer has the Park CM-25 Pro level chain cleaner from Park Tool. But you can get the Pedro's do one, and it's called the Chain Pig 2. And it's significantly cheaper.
Oh, yeah.
And it's red and it looks like a pig. So that's right.
I'll check that one out.
I agree with the service intervals, except I say the service interval for cleaning and checking my chains after every ride. I make sure it's good. Do you know, other than you guys, do you guys know anyone that's got like a chain checker? Like
I have multiple chain checkers.
Measuring.
Yeah. Like I can't think of any mates that have one.
No, because I think mine around.
I know a few shops with them that my mates use. So they kind of indirectly inherit it. I don't have one personally, but yeah.
It's that little like
I use mine all the time.
Yeah, they're like $10.
They're so worth it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
the drop-in one's by far the best. Like, cheap, easy.
Do you think I was about to say, and like this, I guess this thought hasn't come into my mind until now, so I could be kind of off the mark with it. But do you think, like you were mentioning before about service intervals with chains and just drivetrain in general, do you think maybe the reason why, and I could be totally off the mark, but do you think maybe the reason why is because there's so much variance in quality? Like you've got hollow link chains that are going to stretch more. You've got half link, like not for mountain bike, but like half link chains. You've got varying quality sprockets and running gear and whatever. So like it would be so hard for a company to establish service intervals because they've got so much variance in the quality of their product line.
100%, man. Like, and that's the thing. You've got the quality of the roller and the tolerance in which the roller is going to move, and that comes down to how the chain's pinned as well. Like, so how that pin is flared out. That'll make a huge difference from the cheaper chains, the bigger ones. The cogs, 100%, and then the user. Like, you're right. That's why they'll never be. I think the only guys who give a kilometer reading for chains is not roll off. One of those German companies does.
Yep.
And that's it. Because I think you're right. There's just too many variances with it. Like, and the way it's used and the way it's cleaned, the way it's maintained, and like tolerance is 100%. Like, it'd be too hard. The difference, I don't know what it'd be, and I'm not speaking for SRAM or this is personal, but there would be 100% aware difference between an NX chain and an XX1 chain due to tolerances, and the price. Yeah.
Yeah. like certainly, like I've even noticed it before, like with exactly the same running gear, let alone changing like sprockets and, you know, all that type of gear. But I've even noticed, and I think we've all done this as well, is like you're at a race or something, you're on a trip or whatever, and it's like you snap a chain and you just buy whatever you can find. So you end up buying like just a cheap like NX chain or whatever. And the thing just flogs out sort of straight away. And it's not saying that SRAM NX chains are bad or anything, but it's like, you know, there's an obvious kind of difference. So yeah.
Yeah, the pin quality for me is the biggest. Like I'll always put, like don't get me wrong, I always have nice shit on my bikes because I'm lucky enough with my job to do that. But even before then, like when I was in bike shops, I'd always put the top of the line chain for that group set on whatever I had. So if I had 105 or if I had Rival, I would be going for that Durace or that Rent level chain. And that comes down to the way, obviously the coatings on the chains play a difference and the tolerance, but also that hollow link pin and then the way that that hollow link pin is stamped plays a massive role, and that will change the shifting. So if you downgrade, your shifting is going to go to shit because you were on the thing before.
And I think what my next point was going to be is I think that a lot of people, and I don't know if you've seen this, but certainly something that I think is a bit of a vibe, is that a lot of people will go spend a lot of money and have like Eagle everything, but then they know that a chain is a kind of a replaceable commodity, so they'll just buy the cheapest chains possible and just be like, oh well, I'm going to change it every whatever anyway. But it's like, dude, you've got such an expensive drivetrain and you're using the cheapest chain. Like, what's the deal there? Like personally, like I guess from your point of view, if you had to choose, would you choose cheap sort of drivetrain, expensive chain, or cheap chain, expensive drivetrain? Like personally, I'd choose a good chain.
Yeah, I'd go the good chain every day. Like I've got a whole bunch of show and tell, as I said, but like that's the, I got this out for a different reason, but that's an XO1 cassette. I don't know the retail price off the top of my head, but I think that's about $100, maybe $200 cheaper. It's the same cassette as XX1 Eagle. Like the way it's produced and it's machined from one piece of steel and all that, it's exactly the same. I would choose that and then run the XX1 chain every day of the week because the XX1 chain's better. XO1, XX1 are negligible, but like I'd still go the top of the line chain and find the coatings are better. It's usually a hollow pin. The hollow pin doesn't, everyone talks about weight with hollow pin. I used to hear it heaps in shops. I don't need to save the weight or go the normal pin. The hollow pin actually produces a better pin. So when it's stamped at the pin and it flares out so the links don't all vibrate off, it goes in deeper. So yeah, I would go the more expensive chain and a cheaper rest of it every day of the week. I would run a steel chain ring, which is like GX level, less than GX level, like NX level, with the expensive chain, with the steel cassette, because then those two bits are going to run better and then it will wear the chain out less. So.
Yeah, because I know, like, just say, for instance, from sort of the BMX days as well, like my BMX days was that, and that's a prime example where you're putting down like a lot of power and like all your cranks, like all your pedal strokes are under power. Like there's no just rolling around. Is that you'd wear through chain so fast if you didn't run a good one. And something that I see a lot of guys doing at the moment, and the reason they do it is just to get a good axle position. I realize that, but I know this isn't a BMX podcast, but a lot of BMXers run half links, like BMX races. Like half links are great in park riding and that type of shit. But races, a lot of races using half links, and I'm just so against it because the link obviously flares. So each pedal stroke you're putting in is trying to straighten that flared bit. And, you know, like I was chatting to a mate of mine the other day who still races BMX. He's like, oh, dude, my half link stretches so much. I'm like, yeah, no shit.
Yeah. There's more links. Yeah.
Basic physics.
I put a half link on my dirt jumper a month ago. I've had to like pull that thing back from the dropouts like 3 times in that time. I didn't ever do it absolutely. The old chain, you know what I mean?
I'll before we move on to the next one, I'll take the time to give one of my customers a bit of a shout here, and I saw it the other day. But yeah, he's running a different coloured quick link. So because he races enduro, so like if he has to break the chain in a hurry or whatever, he can easily find it because it's a different colour. So I thought that was just a neat little thing.
I've always appreciated that oil slick quick link that comes on SRAM. Like always appreciate
Unless you have the oil slick chain, which I found the other day when I took mine off for a YouTube thing. I was like helping a dude out through PSI, and I was like, where is this thing? Because it's, when it's on the black chain or the silver chain, you can find it, but on the rainbow one, it's harder. But yes, I do. Yeah, I like it. Now it's got a silver one on it, and I'm stoked.
Well, anyway, going down the BMX route, but like if you look at just on Mick's point there, like Japanese Keirin races or track races, they all use like $200 per Izumi chains.
Yeah,
for a reason.
Those things are sick.
Yeah, you will never kill those things. They're insane.
Yeah.
And Lockie, you might be able to.
The chain's doing all the work in the drivetrain, right? Like all of it. Sorry.
And you might be able to correct me on this, but like a shifter and a derailleur are all going to shift and move the chain the same amount, right? Like there's not that much difference between them except for ergonomics and weight, really. The chain and cassette.
All the derailleur's doing is moving X amount every time, right? What is going to affect the shift more than anything, if that's aligned perfect, is the chain. If the chain flexes more or moves, it's not going to shift as crisply. So, you put the better chain on the cheaper drivetrain, and the cheaper drivetrain starts to feel like the better drivetrain because the chain's stiffer. It's working in a better tolerance or high tolerance in production, and then there's less flex at the pins. So yeah, as you 100%, as long as that movement is going bang, 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 it's going to more be the chain than anything else.
And you showed that this isn't on our sheet, and I don't think Mick's had enough time to think about this, but you showed us that cassette just then, which is a 24-hour manufacturing period, one piece cassette.
Something like that. Sure. I think 13 is a number that's ringing through in my head, but it's like
it might have shown.
That's machined. Like this part is one piece of steel, and that's always been the benefit of SRAM cassettes is they're steel, so they last forever as long as your chain doesn't stretch out too much. And that's what I'm saying. The front chain rings that are steel as well are awesome because the weight difference is 0.3 of fuck all. But they'll last a lot longer as well. So they'll preserve the chain life longer because the material is denser. Well, you probably know more about the material aspect of it, I suppose, than me, Mick. But I've had a road cassette with a mechanical groups that I had where that thing's done had done 22,000 Ks, I think, in the end of it. I just replaced the chain ever so often because the chain's not flogging out the cassette as much because this is a hard material and it's steel. So you stay on top of the chain replacement, you get a lot more life out of all the other bits.
Yeah, look, I don't know exactly what material it's made out of. It'll be like 4140 or something like that. But just kind of on that note, I think that steel's a great material. I think it doesn't get enough respect, sort of particularly in the bike industry. Steel's great. I remember when I was doing a lot of BMX, there is a company called Tree, and I remember so I've got one of their BMX frames still, and I've got one of their sprockets as well, and they were making whatever grade it was, whether it was 4130 or 4140 or whatever, but just a really hard steel. And for anyone that doesn't know, particularly like a chromoly or whatever is way, way, way stronger than any aluminium. And basically they were making lighter front chain rings out of steel than they were out of aluminium just because they could take so much meat out of it. And it looked sick too because it was really thin line chain ring. But certainly a good material.
I was going to ask.
Steel is real.
It is. It's the best. I was actually going to ask Mick because
a lot of people,
because you're from the manufacturing side and stuff, when you look at a SRAM cassette or a cassette like that, does it kind of blow your mind how intricate and how difficult it is to make it, and that kind of reflects in the price? Because people think these things are expensive, but I couldn't fathom.
Well, yeah, I'll go out and first of all, a one-piece cassette, no wonder it's expensive. Like, it's bloody hard to make. Particularly high volume. Well, like, of course, once you go up in volume, things sort of start to get cheaper. But what you've got to take into account is, like, your cheap stuff. If you can make a mold or whatever and just stamp stuff out really quick, then, like, the upfront cost for that mold or the stamping die or whatever, the upfront cost is a lot, but it pays itself back if you're doing thousands and thousands of units, where to CNC out a cassette, the cost per cassette is always going to be the same, because you're starting with a block of material and the process of doing each one is going to be the same. So that's why they're kind of expensive, but yeah, they're worth their weight in gold. I mean, the extra strength of any product that you can get out of, well, this is a big rabbit hole, but yeah, sort of CNCing something out of a piece of billet is a very good method. Basically, like, the grain of the structure all follows one way. So you physically, like, the stress through that part is as though it's one block of material. Whereas if something is just cast, is that all the grain structure is all over the place. So it doesn't really act as one piece. So that's, like, you can get really complex with this if you want to go into forging and whatever. So, like, you push a piece of metal into a die so it keeps its grain structure and it contours and all that type of stuff. But as far as manufacturing something like a cassette and CNCing it all, like, there's a fair bit to it. But like I said, it's sort of worth its weight in gold.
Yeah, I think it's just cool to.
And I'm not exactly sure of, like, their whole process, whether they forge it first and then CNC after, or whether it's just a standard block of material. I'm really not over that. But in any case, obviously it's post machined. So quite complicated.
I think it's like a really cool piece of technology that's, like, on a bike. Like, it's a bicycle at the end of the day, and to have that amazing, like, just the way it's constructed, I don't think SRAM tells enough about it. And I just think it's
I mean, like, for instance, if you, like, if WRP, say, catted that up, and we would have machined that, it would, like, as a one-off, that would cost a lot of money. Like, it'd be thousands. So my point being is the fact that SRAM can actually produce them for the cost they do is actually a testament to their product.
The photos that so I never went to go to the Taiwan facility, which I wish I would have, but obviously COVID probably didn't really help with that when I was at SRAM. But, like, the photos I've seen of, like, kind of the stages of that production is pretty cool. Like, literally at the start, it's this rusty sphere, well, not sphere, like, circle.
Yeah.
And it's pretty gnarly to see that. You're like, whoa. And what I found with Stu is when you show people that, they're like, they kind of get it then. They're like, oh, that's why that thing's so expensive. Like, it's a lot of time. Yeah.
We'll move on to kind of the next thing as well while we're talking about that. But how do you guys kind of keep your shifting smooth and working well? Like, do you guys have any specific tricks?
Try not to bash your derailleur too hard.
I don't do much, man. I can honestly, and this is going to sound like such a fucking cliche thing, but it's like, I've got access. I clean my chain. I clean the jockey wheels. That's it. I don't need to worry about a cable. I can hit the thing as much as I want and it moves out of the way. I'm pretty good. It's just cleaning the thing. There used to be a lot more, like, replacing cables is a big one. Making sure there's no kinks in the cable is a massive one. I think staying on top of cable replacement's big in itself for normal drivetrains. But that's about it. Like, once you go axis, and the same thing when I went electronic with road, the whole cable thing goes away. And mountain bikes, that cable thing is a big thing because they kink and move on a dual suspension. So Yeah, I'd stay on top of your cables and clean your drivetrain. Check
Yeah,
your
I think
free-hub bearings.
the only thing I'd say, like, to expand on that is, and like, trust me, like, I kind of learned the hard way with this because I sort of came into mountain biking late as well, is that I think frequency is the important thing. Like, it's very easy to adjust something really finitely, like, oh, it's just a little bit out, and you tweak it and you fix it. But if you let it go and it starts to build into this bigger beast, is all of a sudden you put it off, so it's harder to get back, like, to the big increment to get it back right. But, you know, it's so easy. Just even say, like, with, like, obviously without axis, but like, just say you've got cable shifting. If you notice it's just out a little bit, just tweaking it, that'll take 2 seconds, will just give you another interval before it goes out again. Whereas if you keep putting it off and it just kind of builds into a bigger issue, then yeah, that's when it really becomes a pain in the ass, I think.
I think the biggest tip, if you're not mechanically savvy, is go into your shop regularly. Get them to check your chain and see where the chain wear's at. Like exactly what you said, Mick, like a bit of chain wear at the start is nothing too major if you need to replace your chain. But once you leave that and then your cassette and your chain ring's worn, it's a whole other beast, you know what I mean? So I think, you know, either invest in some tools like a nice chain checker, which, as you said, you know, Darren's like $15 for a drop-in. And if not, you know, just pop into your shop. Most shops are going to be super happy to check your chain because it means they'll sell you a chain if it's worn. But just staying on top of that, I think, is probably the biggest tip. Stay on top of your chain and life is going to be easier and cheaper in the long run.
100%.
For sure.
Yeah.
It's better going in and spending $80 or whatever on a new chain than $1,000 on a whole new drivetrain.
Exactly. Like, as I said, like the XX1 version of that, I think retails for, I'm making this up, but I think it's at $750, $799. It's like $800, right? That's like 8 chains. Like, you know, that's a lot of life. Like, it'd take you a long time to get through 8 chains. But if you leave that one chain, it won't take you very long to get through that one cassette.
I think they're about $650. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not bad. Yeah. But yeah, those chains will kill those cassettes for sure. But yeah, as a peasant that still has cables, I'd definitely like to. Yeah, we're just peasants down here, Mick.
I'm spoiled. I'm not going to say it's the norm, but it's the future.
Oh, absolutely, it's the future. Yeah, for sure.
And look, GX has gotten better, but it's still not cheap. I'm not going to sit here and say it's cheap.
But just, yeah, simple things like keeping your cables clean and replacing them and making sure there's no kinks. And like you see some cables and they're just bent at 90 degrees and it just shows how good shifting still works at that point.
Well,
all the time,
I think,
sorry. Yeah.
You're right, mate. Go for it.
I was going to say, I see bent cables all the time. Like, and a lot of it's to do with the frame design. But yeah, like SRAM make this awesome, or RockShox make this awesome little fitting that you use for hydraulic lines that kind of threads into both lines at the same time. And you can get it to work with the gears. It's not perfect like a brake hose. But that makes life so much easier for replacing your old cable with a new one because you just thread it into each end and then pull the old one through and the new one goes in. Like stuff like that does make it a lot easier. I think people get scared of just replacing those cables because it's in the frame and like we've all, I'm sure, been fishing cables out of a frame at some point in our lives. I've wasted so many hours doing it, but stuff like that does make it a lot easier as well. So,
well, yeah, what I was going to say is I think from my experience anyway, I think the biggest issue that I've ever had with stuff getting broken or whatever is really in transport. Like I see like obviously there's advantages in access for riding and crashing and smacking a derailleur and whatever. But the biggest advantage I see is just in transport because it's like you always screw a cable anytime you fly a bike, like you got to readjust stuff and whatever. So, and even not just transport, even just storage, like, you know, you're racking them on the wall and you're banging bikes together or whatever. So.
Always take the derailleur off with transport. I'm sure you do, Mick, but to everyone listening, that's always take that puppy off or you're just going to bend your hanger. when the people at the airport throw your bike bag across the room.
I was in a rush when I came back from Adina and forgot to do it, and I cried a lot when I took that bike out of the bag. I've never seen a hanger bent so badly in my life.
It's like, I'm not even mad. I'm impressed how that bent without snapping.
It was, yeah, I was quite impressed. Well done, Canyon, on that one. That was, yeah, it should have snapped 100%. Have you thought about going wireless, Mick? Is that like something on your...
Oh, mate, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. For sure. You know, the only reason I haven't is just because on all my bikes I run Shimano. And like I was a SRAM guy for a while. I like kind of mixing it up and just seeing what I like. To be honest with you, the only reason I didn't was that I changed I bought a new whole derailleur, cassette and whatever after Medina, because Medina just destroys stuff. But because I had Shimano, everything else, like Shimano cranks, like everything, I was like, I'll just get another cassette derailleur, same as what I had. But if I was changing everything, I would have just because that was right when GX Axis came out. And I was like an inch away from pulling the trigger, but I was like, I kind of like having componentry matched. So I didn't want to have to spend more money on it. Yeah, exactly.
I need to make this point quickly, sorry, but please don't mix and match stuff. And third-party companies as well are rubbish. If you've got a chain that's it works on 3 different brands, they're dealing with 3 different tolerances, so they work okay on 3 different brands. And like Mick, as I said, everyone's going to run a different product. I'm stoked that there's different brands. As much as I'll laugh and make a joke because I'm full SRAM. If you're running a Shimano system, run Shimano. If you're running SRAM, run SRAM. If you're running Campy, run Campy, because they're made to work with one another. And if you start mix matching stuff in there, that's when things go wrong. Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely.
So I appreciate you running all 100%.
Yeah. No, I was I even I'll even say I even thought about, even though it's discontinued, but I even thought about buying Di2, just because I wanted electronic stuff so bad. But yeah, if I was, like I was saying, if I was up for a full group swap out, I would have pulled the trigger on Axis for sure.
I know a guy. I know a guy if you want to talk.
Yeah, I know a guy too.
Toby.
Yeah, I just got that. Yeah. What I was going to say, that's what I was going to ask actually, is about running Shimano on SRAM and SRAM on Shimano, because I have done it in the past for standards. So someone's flogged out their 3x9 thing on their 2009 Stumpy and they don't want to get rid of the bike. Good luck getting 3x9. That's cheaper than, say, Shimano. So to run a HG cassette body, you run an NX cassette, then you run an NX chain or something, and then you buy a Dior for $300, and it ends up being $200 cheaper for the customer.
Yeah, look, I've been in shops and I get it. I 100% get it. And obviously now with stock as well being a thing, the lower the gearing you go, the more likely stuff will work better because the chains are thicker, so there's more room for things to go out. But I think once you get up to 11, 12 speed where the tolerance is that tight, that's when it really starts to show if something does or doesn't. From working in shops, I got to the point where I just wouldn't mix and match shit because it was more trouble most of the time to do it and then deal with things not working. But that being said, I wasn't dealing with a whole bunch of 3x9 at that point. You know what I mean? So the stuff will work. It's just not optimal. Whatever the company is, they design something and they test it with their own drivetrain, and it's a system. It's not just a chain and a cassette. It's a drivetrain system. I think it's important to keep them together for how they're intended to work. Because, if you have a problem, and it's different for the 3x9 customer, right? But if you have a problem with your whatever system and it's because you've used X drivetrain with Y chain, the first thing that problem's going to be is with Y chain. It's not how the system's meant to work. So But yeah, look, I appreciate stuff's compatible. Like stuff is technically compatible. It doesn't mean it works the best it can.
I think it was like a test.
There were a fair few guys. Sorry, there were a fair few guys like on the World Cup and whatever that were running Saint derailleurs and like full Shimano group, but with a SRAM mini block cassette.
Yeah. Oh, I see.
That was quite popular. Yeah, like I've got that on my downhill bike at the moment. I've had it on for the last couple of years. Wouldn't recommend it. It's just that the mini blocks look so much better than the Saint 10 speed.
Are you running?
Yeah, the dodgy sound, like it's an intended product. Like it's the only real proper downhill cassette that I'm aware of. I'm sure there's like little brands around that I haven't seen. Yeah, like it's a good product. And those XX1 level or the XO level ones, like those things never wear out because they're steel. So like they're a masterpiece.
I had a bike shop. I won't disclose the name. They weren't Australian, overseas, but on an old downhill bike of mine, I actually had a bike shop put the chain whip on sideways. I'm assuming this is how they did it because I don't know how you do it anyway, but they had the chain whip on a little bit sideways and it was crossing over two cassette cogs and snapped a tooth off my XO1 cassette and I was fuming.
Did they do anything for you? Or just like that?
Well, what was funny, and this is going to go down a huge rabbit hole, I've got the bike back now, but actually it ended up getting stolen the next day. So.
Is that the sender?
Yeah.
Are you running?
I got it back. I rode it around the car park the other day. So reminiscent.
Are you running a SRAM chain on that mono block cassette with the Shimano stuff?
Yep.
Because that is very, very important to what I was saying before is you have to run, if you are going to break Lockie's heart and run different things, you have to run the same brand chain and cassette. Otherwise it will never work. And yeah, running like a KMC, the amount of, I'm not afraid to say the brand, KMC chains, like the amount of people I've seen get those and then their shifting's bad. And then in current stock climate, like some brands are stocking KMC chains from stock with Shimano cassettes and stuff. They just never shift.
Yeah.
It never works. Yeah, because there's no stock of chains. So
without getting into like
chain. Sorry, I think we've got a bit of a delay. That's why we're cutting each other off a little bit.
Real passionate about driving.
I ran a KMC chain for a while, and like I didn't do any quantitative testing on it to actually figure out a number, but it seemed to wear out quite quick.
They're just, as I said, they're made to be okay with potentially three different drivetrains. Normally it's three because Campy's still around. And they say they work on all, or maybe four now with Rotor. They're just never quite right. They're never terrible. They're never just quite right. And like, without getting into too many specifics, like I've seen so many issues with drivetrains where customers are like, oh, my derailleur, like they're blaming the derailleur and they're like, I've done everything. And then you take a KMC chain off and you put the right chain on and it all goes away. You know what I mean? So yeah, like same, I'm not really afraid to say it. I don't like KMC chains and I don't like third-party chains in whatever system. Likewise, I wouldn't tell you to put a SRAM chain on your Shimano drivetrain for the exact same reason.
It won't work. It'll be shit. It'll be terrible. I've tried it just for shits and giggles. It doesn't work.
I've been there too, right? Like my background's racing, so like I've done all of the dodgy things. So it's not like me on my high horse, like always having nice stuff. Like I've done everything dodgy that you could do on a bike. I've probably done it because I was like living in a shithole trying to race overseas. Like, yeah, I've tried it. I'm trying to help you all from not making my mistakes.
Oh, dude, yeah, absolutely. And that's like I was saying too, like, so kind of came into mountain biking pretty late. Like there was so much more to the servicing to it than BMX racing. Yeah, absolutely. And particularly, like I was saying before, like particularly if you're racing, you always find yourself in those sticky situations where, like, particularly if you're going overseas or whatever, it's really hard to take a heap of spares. So you always find yourself in that situation where something goes wrong and it's like the only options you have is what the bike shop has at the resort. And it's like, you got to run something, but yeah.
It's the same with power locks. Like, and I didn't learn this forever, but power locks are one use. Like they had been since 10 speed. And I'd like get to races and snap a chain in a race and be salty on the chain. And it's because I had a power link that I'd, used 14 times before. And it's because they're a single use where they lock in, like they have a lip and the lip goes away. And it was just a learning thing, you know what I mean? Like, and again, it's just where you are, it's your environment. Sometimes you don't have that option, but like I probably would have preferred to spend $50 on 50 power locks or power links than I would have wasted that race result from my chain breaking after spending thousands of dollars going overseas.
I think like the other thing is too, and like mindful, probably want to get on to the next question or whatever, but the other thing is that that I think is kind of underlooked is that before the chain even stretches lengthways, which you can obviously measure with your tool or whatever, is that chains, and it differs per brand, of course. I think you were saying this to Lockie just with the pins and the tolerances and whatever, is that before, depending on the quality of the chain, but before it'll stretch long ways, it'll just get real shaggy side to side. And
that's a hard one you can't measure. And I've really tried ways to do that. It's so hard.
And it's where you just got to be super proactive, hey?
Yeah, exactly. Like I wouldn't say I'm a chain whisperer, but I can kind of feel when it's going shit, like from feeling it and seeing how the shifting's feeling. But then for the most part, the rollers do usually start to wear by that point. Because on like on a BMX chain, the chains do stretch a lot this way. But on like a mountain bike chain, it's more the rollers that wear as opposed to the overall length changing. So the rollers will move apart and you can measure that stretch as opposed to like the links, whereas like a half link chain, as you said, that will physically stretch a lot. They're a little bit different in that stretch. So what you're doing with like the chainway tools is you're measuring the stretch of the rollers and how that moves around, and how much movement they have there is how far they'll sit on the chain rings and on the teeth of the cassette. And the more that sits on the cassette, the more material it's pushing off the cassette or off the chain ring. And that's what gives you those shark teeth. The same with that dimension changing in terms of the rollers moving and how much material is wearing off will happen from dirt, debris, and grit and grime. That's where cleaning is important. It'll give you a longer lasting drivetrain. It's not putting more pressure on those teeth to go from like this to a shark tooth. Or a shark fin, however you want to call it. But essentially you want to not have them moving too much.
100%. For sure. Yeah. I usually just grab each end of the chain and see if it laterally joins up at each end. So put the chain on its side and flex it around and see how much it bends.
I got a mad photo of me at an event doing that, like holding a chain like full circle. And that thing was pretty flogged. Yeah.
It's almost like satisfying.
Well, yeah, it's funny. Yeah, like it's certainly like you can swap a chain out and you think it's pretty good still, like not fully shagged, but it's not until you pick up the new one, you're like, oh God, this is like so much better.
Yeah, and new chains are also more silent too, right? Because they've got that real thick, like heat treated on waxy stuff to them. Like, I love fresh chains, and a lot of the top guys still love, a fresh chain for that reason. But yeah, once you change it, you're like, whoa, that's so much better. Like, yeah, I think it's good for people. Like, remember talking to Moyer about this a while ago, where he was just wearing through stuff. Like, people really, it's the same with suspension. They don't realize how much they ride. And that's where tools like Strava is awesome, and making like a Google spreadsheet of like the last time I replaced my chain was this, and start to look at the Ks or the hours that you're riding, because on a mountain bike, it's going to be more hours. But like Moyer had like a shagged group. There was a ton he was dropping chains on the front chainring. That was it. His chainring was just flogged, but he'd replaced the chain. He just never replaced the chainring. But I feel if he'd had like a spreadsheet of like, oh, last time I replaced this and this, I need to replace all three, that would have, gone away. So I think that's a good thing to keep a record of personally as a little tip. And if you're on Strava, you can look at how much you're riding pretty easy.
For sure, 100%. So I'm just writing down an idea here quickly.
Replace chainring.
just something I'll talk about later. Just a quick break. All right, this is the rabbit hole that Mick wanted to go down before. He's raring for it. But if all of our current drivetrains have so many issues and so many like little tweaks and stuff, why haven't gearboxes taken off? And what do you think are some of the benefits?
Yes, how long have you got? Well, I think there's multiple things in this. I should probably get my notepad and start writing them down before I forget them all. But firstly, I'll say that the players that are involved are relatively niche, small companies. They haven't had a big backer like SRAM or Shimano to really pour into something. I think the closest that we saw was the RN01, the Honda, which we discussed a little bit earlier, which for all intents and purposes sounded really good. This never really came to fruition, but like you've got these smaller niche European companies who are giving it a crack, but I guess don't really have the financial backing like a SRAM or Shimano to pour into the R&D. Second one would be, well, Gear claims that they do now. Well, I'm really interested to see it, but all the players up until now have only had twist shift, which has been a big no-no.
Yeah.
And then the biggest one, and this is kind of just gearbox wide, other than, like I was saying, other than the Honda, but anytime you've got componentry moving in different directions, you've just got huge losses. So basically the way that like a pinion works or whatever is you've got like through shaft of your cranks, turning gears, and those gears mesh with other gears in front of them. But obviously where you've got a cog rotating, this camera's backwards, but where you've got a cog rotating this way, the other cog is going to turn backwards. So basically you've just got huge losses with turning a whole another set of gears the other direction. It can be argued how like what percentage that is, but I won't go into it because it has a lot of variance depending on how large the cogs are and, you know, what oil they're moving in and all that type of jazz, what the gear difference in ratio is and all that. So that's the big one why gearboxes haven't taken off, is just because of the efficiency loss that you have throughout the system. Weight, like they're quite big and bulky. And like I was saying, those gears are sitting in a bath of oil. So just by slopping them around through a viscous fluid is taking out a lot of that efficiency and adding to the weight, of course, as well. One thing that I think, and this is what Lockie was saying before, I guess, is there's a lot of variance in the efficiency of a drivetrain, a conventional drivetrain, mainly down to how well you maintain it. Because like if you've got a dirty, shitty drivetrain, you're going to have losses included in that. But if you've got a clean drivetrain that is well trued and all of that, a conventional bicycle drivetrain is upwards of 99% efficient. Like it's an extremely efficient system. Gearboxes, that number varies, like the percentage of losses varies, but it's a few percent that you're losing just in the way of moving another set of cogs in the opposite direction. And when you're talking about very minimal power, I mean, if you're talking about a gearbox system like that on a motorcycle or whatever, you're dealing with a lot of power to begin with. But the thing is, like, you've only got a human powering it, so a couple of percent losses is quite dramatic. And you feel it too. It's not like you just burn through more fuel or ride the clutch more or whatever. Like, you're actually feeling that through your legs. And you know what it feels like when you've got a 1 km/h tailwind, how much faster you feel. So in short, that's basically why I think gearboxes haven't taken off It's kind of those three reasons, and without kind of trying to give too much away, it's sort of certainly what we've got our eyes on with Trinity and WRP is developing a box that that just kind of changes that.
Interesting.
I think e-bikes will be the big pusher to change, to bring gearboxes back again. You know what I mean? Because as you said, it takes out
It's a hat.
the human element, and it's the same with high pivot, right? We always go through waves. I've got nothing against gearbox. I think they're sick. I think, as you said, they've just not been accessible. You know what I mean? Like,
I think the other thing is, because you've had these relatively niche players, is that they've kind of settled on a bolt pattern standard now, because pinion's sort of the dominant one in the market. But even up until recently, like, what we're going to do, like, you had to get a proprietary frame made around having that bolt pattern so you could whack in this niche product. No one was really like motocross or whatever. You buy a YZ250 from the factory, it's like, it's all one thing. Whereas, well, still, like, yeah, you've got like Zeroed and whatever pairing up with Pinion, but they're two separate companies coming together to make one thing. But outside of that, like, every other frame on the market comes with standard bottom bracket. Like, there's not even the option to bolt a pinion or, you know, a gearbox to it. So I think there's this whole, it's not a very sort of linear method of even combining the technology, even if you wanted to.
What I liked with the Trinity, like, when I saw it at the Handmade, and you were like, you could do either, because for someone like me, I'd want to try back and forth, and that's never been a possibility before.
And that's that's the whole idea with the Trinity, was to having that bolt-in bottom bracket, so we can actually, and like, we've kind of been busy with other projects of late, but that's kind of been the whole thing with Trinity, is to actually get some quantitative data on the same bike, like, just swap out the drivetrain, like standard bottom bracket, gearbox, and actually get some quantitative data on the literal figures, like, what is the percentage lost comparative? Because, like, you could do that test now, like if you got a Zeroed or something compared to like a Supreme, but the point is they're a different bike altogether. So, like, what is it in? Is it in the drivetrain, or is it in the suspension kinematics? Where at least with the Trinity, it's like the same bike.
I like it. I'm keen to see more.
I liked your explanation.
Yeah, I'm keen to get the data.
Well, it's funny you mentioned like the e-bike thing there, Blocky, because I think Effigear and one of the brands has come together and they made like an e-bike / gearbox pairing.
Yeah, I read that the other day on Pink Bike.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, I think that's where that's all going. Like, if you add a little bit more weight to this already heavy thing at the bottom bracket, like, it's no harm done. It makes it more simple. A lot of e-bike riders aren't really cyclists. I don't think they have the connotation of external drivetrain being a thing. And you've already got to send the thing off to get fixed anyway if something fucks up. So you may as well have the same thing with the gearbox if your motor's going to die. You know what I mean? So I think it's a different customer that it would definitely work with. I think limitations at the moment just come down to expectations of what people are used to. You know, I want to be able to see my gears and to adjust it. You know what I mean? Like, not that you can. Like, if something goes wrong with an electronic derailleur, you can't fix it. You know what I mean? You've got to talk to the people.
Yeah, I kind of hated on e-bikes for a long while, and like, as a purist, I kind of still do. But
I love e-bikes.
In all seriousness, though, like, I think e-bikes will be one of the best things. Like, we'll look back at it and see e-bikes as one of the best things that has happened to the mountain bike industry for a few reasons. Like, it's introducing a lot more money, like, one, from the consumer, like, a lot more people are buying mountain bikes because they're buying an e-bike, which means big players are getting involved. Like, I just saw a thing today that Husqvarna are bringing out an e-bike. Like, it's a big player. Gas have got one out at the moment, I think. And I mean, they're all under the KTM banner. So you've got big players involved, not only to kind of sort of trump up the technology and whatever there, but I also think that there's been this continuing trend over the last couple of years to try to get weight down and all that type of stuff to fit a certain narrative, mainly kind of enduro. But I think this whole e-bike thing will be good for the industry kind of as a whole. I mean, even like a couple of years ago, I'm sure people are still doing it now, but like I knew a lot of downhillers that were even going out and buying like guide E's because they were using the old code caliper with a guide master cylinder and lever, and they were like super cheap, but they had awesome braking power, and it was off the back of the e-bike industry. But, point being is I think that the money and the exposure that e-bikes will bring in is a really good thing for non-e-bikers.
I think Pink Bike said it a few years ago, or maybe it was someone else. So I didn't say it, but like it was like e-bikes making the components that everyone who used to race downhill wants.
Yeah.
Exactly. I think it's true. Like, get earlier stuff. I think suspension is going to really be one of the biggest beneficiaries of e-bikes. I think suspension is going to be looked at in a lot more different space, and you already see a lot more tuning and stuff happening. I think opening up from e-bikes, people are thinking about it more. Like you look at like Will Ride, like they're investing in doing all the suspension stuff because there is a niche where people kind of want more of that done. And I think because people have more money in that sport, or in that, not sport, but in that type of riding, like they're kind of more open to it as well. It's like moto, right? Like you've got a moto mindset now on a push bike, which before was pretty limited unless you went to your niche kind of suspension tuners. So yeah,
100%.
For sure.
Cool. I think that's enough on drivetrains. I think we've talked about everything. Almost. Could go for years. Maybe we should do one on e-bikes.
I'd be down. I love e-bikes.
Speaking of e-bikes, we'll move on to the hot or not thing. That new Scott e-bike. What are you guys' thoughts on that?
I didn't think it was that bad. I think it got a real bad rap from online people because it's like it's all integrated and shop people are going to hate it. It's like I think they said this a couple of podcasts ago. The more integrated stuff is, the more money you can charge for stuff. So like it's not the end of the world. Just charge for it. Like I think people get the shits because they don't charge enough. It's like, well, if you need to replace the headset bearings on that bike, you're going to make money on changing the lines. And yeah, that sucks, whatever, but you didn't buy the bike, the customer did. So I like the level of integration. I think it looks like a Batmobile. I think it's where stuff's going to go. And yeah, I don't mind it. Yeah, I'm whatever. Like I'm not going to buy one, but I think it's cool. I don't like the inline shock. That's my only hate.
That was my...
Inline shocks do not belong on e-bikes. You want a piggyback shock on an e-bike.
Yeah, that was my big thing, was the inline shock that's enclosed. Like that thing is going to heat up so fast and just die. But the integration's all right. I just don't want to work on one.
Yeah.
And
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It was cool to see the motors actually rotated as well. That was another big thing. I've been like bros have done it for ages with the Specialized. Yeah. How about you, Mick? You going to get one anytime soon?
No, I'm not going to rush out and get an e-bike anytime soon because they're too easy. I'd fall in love with it too easy.
I don't think they're easy.
No,
like go do
not.
Big days. Like I want to get one and go do like 75 Ks on Sunday.
You're right. Easy is the wrong word. Easy is the wrong word. But yeah. Anyway, if I had endless money, I'd probably go get one. But I'm okay with my current quiver. Trinity's taken enough of my money anyway, so I'll, but no, like certainly we like on that point. I guess we've got sort of kind of got scope to develop into the e-bike market as well with that. But back to the Scott thing, look, I did see it. I looked at a couple of pictures, but I really haven't looked in depth enough to really make a comment against it. Other than what you guys have already said. I think it's cool. I like it. It looks like the integration's cool, but for like the flaws that you guys pointed out are totally valid as well.
I sent you guys a post about this a long time ago. Hopefully it got through to you, about the Faserwerk Bacillus Stab handlebar with no stem. It like almost directly mounts to the steerer.
Oh, I looked at that at like 6 a.m. and just fucking threw my phone at the wall.
Yep.
I can remember you sending something through, but I really can't remember.
It was like Mondraker style, wasn't it? Like,
yeah, it's like a 0 offset stem.
no.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I remember when Mondraker came out, like that's such a sick idea. And then I sat in someone's and like, this feels like shit. And then you looked at like all the races, like had it and then like got rid of it and started getting better results. I'm into it. I like one piece bar and stems, but I don't like 0 offset. I think I'm pretty stoked with my offset thing now. Like I run the offset of the fork and I'm pretty happy. I did the whole lining up my bar thing like we talked about last time, Mick, and I'm pretty happy. Like I'm good. Yeah. I'm just waiting on my stem, mate. Like
yeah, mate. It's I think I said something to you earlier. We were in this talk over thing because of the delay we've got. But yeah, it's on the machine at the moment. So pretty amped to get off for you. Yeah.
I was just razzing you up, but that sounds sick. I don't have a bike for it.
Well, I'll have to sell it to someone else then because I've got a few people asking.
I'm buying it. I'm taking it. I've got my Zeb here. I've got all my parts and most of them here. I'm just waiting on my Jackal to rock up. So.
Yeah, ripper. Yeah, I mean, I guess it references the last episode we did with this tech talk, but I get it. I get quite a few requests actually for a zero reach stem. Look, a little bit like the last conversation, like I'll never ever diss anyone's idea. Like if they genuinely think it works better for them, like I'll listen to that because personal preference means a lot. Personally, I don't like it, but there are people that do, and they feel as though they get an advantage out of it. As for like one piece steerer stem, I think conceptually it is a kind of a neat idea, but I think it also introduces its own limitations too, because unless a company was willing to have like 100 different molds where like, you know, they've got stem increments, you know, like heaps of different stem increments and then overlap that combination with different rise and roll and all that type of stuff. Unless a company is willing to do that, which I don't think any would, I think they're really pushing shit uphill.
Yeah.
I agree. Yep. 100%. I'm very picky with how my stuff's set up and then I always change it. So one piece would be annoying for me.
But would it take something out for you? Would you stop worrying or would you just still be worried?
No, I'd always feel wrong. I just know, like it would feel wrong. It'd just be one of those things.
I want one piece on my hardtail, but yeah, for like a dually, I don't because the back of the bike changes the front of the bike, right? That's my understanding with them. So yeah.
See what I think, like I'm going to claim that you heard it here first. And, oh shit, maybe I should keep it. No, I'm going to keep it a secret. Keep people waiting. I'll talk to you guys about it afterwards.
Stop it, you big tease.
What are your thoughts on that new Yeti e-bike and that new kind of suspension system they seem to have along with it?
I think it's sick. Like if I had a lot of money and had no brand things, that would be a bike I would look at for sure. I like that Yeti thinks about things for so long. I like the way that linkage works as opposed to the Switch Infinity, which does have its own serviceability issues. And I like that they didn't go for anything crazy geometry-wise. They went for something that worked. Some of those Norcos just look whack. No, I'm a fan. I think it's cool.
Yeah, I think like from my point of view, it's probably the first e-bike that I've ever looked at and thought that looks good. Like I would ride that, and like I think it looks really good. Just as far as like ergonomically, you look at it and you're like, looks pretty sweet. I also think yeah, like the 6-bar thing, like whether you want to go into it, you know, is a whole nother conversation regarding the effects on the kinematics and whatever. But I actually did have a bit of a read. I think it was only this morning. It wasn't this morning, it was yesterday. But I had a little bit of a read on Yeti's sort of blurb that they gave Pink Bike anyway, just in regards to that. And what I thought was really interesting is how they were saying the main reason why they've got that 6-finity as opposed to the switch-finity for the e-bike is just due to the different characteristics on how your suspension moves on an e-bike compared to normal, and particularly not just how the suspension moves, but particularly its reaction to your pedaling forces. So like obviously your anti-squat figures and all that are different on an e-bike because it's pedal assist, like you've got an extra wattage there when you lay down the power. So you need a tweaked kinematic to really sort of get the most out of the whole e-bike thing. So that though, I can't remember exactly because I really did sort of just skim through it, but what they were saying is that the leverage rate is a lot higher than the switch-finity, basically to handle the rough stuff kind of better, but also have it a little bit more playful. So I'm assuming, I didn't look at any graphs or numbers, like just kind of looked at what they articulated through words, but I'm assuming it's a lot more progressive, and that's usually what you find with something with a higher leverage rate. If it's higher leverage rate and as linear, it'll just mean it'll bottom out easier. So I'm assuming it's got a higher leverage rate, but it'll ramp quicker. And that goes into kind of what they were saying about it feeling more playful and whatever as well. And it would also lead into the fact that it's having it sort of more progressive. It's probably going to have, and this is what they're saying as well, is just sort of enhanced anti-squat figures. So when you lay down the power, you're laying down more power than what you would usually have just without an e-bike motor. So like, yeah, you've really got to have that anti-squat coefficient kind of dialed in to make it all work. But yeah, I thought that was interesting. I'd really like to have a little bit more time next time to kind of have a look through their graphs and whatever, and through the 6-bar and work out sort of exactly what's going on there, because I really can't make too much of a comment because I haven't looked. But off face value of what they've said, it all kind of checks out.
It sounded like it doesn't, this is from the Pink Bike thing, but it sounds like it doesn't sit in the travel as much, which I think is what people find to be a benefit to e-bikes. It's actually not a benefit. And that comes down to suspension tunes and the stuff as well. You know, like if you have it sitting in the travel more, it's going to corner better. But then it goes from 0 to hero, bottom out real quick. So I think, from what you said and what Graf said in the video today, it sounds like it uses the stroke a bit better. The progression chip in that's sick, and I want more bikes to have that because it gives people the option of coil and air without having it be a bike that does coil and air, because bikes that do coil and air, I think's much like having a flip chip for stuff like on the enduros. Like there's a better one and there's a worse one. This one can have best of both worlds with a different progression rate.
Yeah. So, what was I going to say? Can't even remember now. Lost my train of thought. Sorry. Yeah. Move on. Oh, no, that's what I was going to say is I think I'm right in saying that they're custom tuning Aftershokz in-house at Yeti too.
Okay.
So that's kind of cool.
That's really cool.
I will make a comment on that note, because I actually visited the Yeti headquarters 2 years ago now, almost to the day actually, with a mate of mine, Jacko White. And if you're ever in Colorado, definitely go check out Yeti. They're awesome guys, and they love Aussies because of Gravesy and all that. But definitely go suss it out. Like they've got some photos I should share, but they have an awesome HQ.
Yeah, sick.
Definitely keen.
Yeah.
Got like a whole sort of Hall of Fame type thing. It's pretty wild.
Last one we'll talk about quickly. The new hang time app from Trailforks tells you how much time you spent there.
Didn't even know it existed.
Yeah, I saw it. Like I've got ShockWiz and it tells you the same thing. And the fucks that I've given about that is probably 0. Like,
Yep.
I don't know, like the thing that's disappointing with the hang time thing, right? Or looking at, you think you're in the air for ages and you're in the air for like 0.5 of a second. Like it's actually quite sad. But I'm sure people are going to be stoked on it, right? If you're a Grom or you're new into riding or you just got an e-bike, like you're going to be like, oh, look how much time I spent in the air. But yeah, I don't really care. It sounds mean.
I think it's very market dependent. I think like if you're in Whistler or Queenstown or whatever, could be kind of useful. If you're in particularly where we're based, you really do bugger all jumping, which I'm really disappointed about because I love jumping. But
yeah.
We just got a new jump trail that actually has jumps, and it's a really
did see that. Yeah,
it's a really, really well built trail. So Adelaide finally has good trails. I can say that now. And
mate, Adelaide's always had good trails.
I like Adelaide.
Great.
I'm just waiting to get more hate.
You have such versatility too. Like you've got like city dirt, like dirt jumps. Like,
do you know what
you understand how jealous Victoria are of that? And not just city dirt. I mean, Adelaide's got heaps of dirt jump spots.
The best thing about this new trail is it's fully accessible for adaptive bikes as well. It's like proper wide, so it's pretty sick.
That's cool.
Yeah, I saw Connor Clancy's new edit. I think he was on it. It looked pretty wild.
He made that.
Yeah, to Connor too. That was a really good edit.
Shout out to Jack and the FSR collective, Jordo Roberts, the producer of the show.
For sure. Yeah, they do a great edit.
That was sick. We'll move on to listener questions. I think we kind of touched on this before, but from Shane De Jong, what's the difference for NX, GX, XO1 and XX1 chains?
I'm not going to go into each just because it's 8 o'clock. It's late. But as you go up through the line, they go to better coating. So you'll find the cheaper chains will usually just have an outer link that's got a coating on it, which will stop from rust and corrosion. And then you'll find the inner links don't. So like, I'm pretty sure SX and NX just have an outer coating. Once you go up to GX, you'll get both links are coated, but there'll be a different, cheaper coating on each link. And then once you get up to the real expensive stuff, you know, it's like electroplated coatings, like your rainbow and all that kind of stuff. It saves a bit of weight. The coating lasts longer. So there's more durability in kind of the wear of that coating and how that chain will potentially corrode or rust. The tolerance in which they're made at is probably the biggest thing. The better the chain, the finer tolerance that it's made to. And the other one is the chain pin and the peening process. So peening is when that link's put through the two between the roller and the plates, and then they're smashed very hard. On the cheaper chains, you'll have a single peen, and if you ever look at a cheaper chain, you'll see there's just a little rectangle shape on each pin. It's just gone bang from both sides once, and it's flared the pin out on kind of two sides mainly, and then there's kind of two sides perpendicular to those, which are potentially spots for weakness, and that's where that, you know, you can get a sloppier chain over time. You go to a cross step peen, so if you ever see that, it looks like a little Jesus cross through the middle, and again, you'll have strong points on here and then smaller, weaker points where there can be movement. Then you go up to semi-hollow pins, so it's a circumferential peen. That machine goes bang in a cylindrical form onto the pin. And then you go to hollow pin. The main difference in strength there is a hollow pin, the peen will go deeper in than a semi-hollow peen. So effectively the chain will last longer in that shifting movement because there's less points for weak points to appear and for flex and wear to occur on the chain. So the biggest ones are going to affect you if you're buying a better chain. Go for the best chain because it's got a hollow pin and it's got a longer lasting coating. You'll get better shifting this way and better wear this way.
Cool. Brad, very simple answer. Next one is a little bit complicated. Does my Hydra i9 hub with 109 points of engagement affect the suspension more? From Ash Granson.
It better not, Mick, because I just bought some of these. So,
firstly, I think he's incorrect with saying 109. I think it should be an even number, but I think it's higher than that. I think it's like 690 or something crazy.
I could have typed it wrong.
anyway, that's just off the top of my head. You could Google the exact number, but it's very high. I've actually got a set.
Yeah, just Google it.
It is 690?
Yeah.
So before we go into that, the reason why they're able to get so many engagement points, because this is something a lot of people that I've talked to don't understand, is that first of all, the Hydras use 6 different pawls, of which I think they've got 3 phases. So at any one time, only 2 of those pawls are ever engaged. And those pawls also have 2 steps on them. So that's how you get so many ratchets kind of in one revolution. You can do the maths on it quite easily. I should actually count how many steps are in the ratchet ring and could work it out that way. But anyway, so without the one thing I would say about hubs that utilize that type of method where you've got pawls out of phase, and another hub that uses that is like Profile Elites. They run a similar thing. I think they've got 6 pawls, 3 of which are out of phase, is that what you can have happen, because it's only hanging on by a knife edge, you can quite often actually slip a pawl. And it feels like it slips, but what's happening is it's just slipping enough, like that pawl won't grab, and it just slips enough to grab the next one. And that's why it's it's not like a full half revolution or anything. It's just a tiny bit, and you'll hear it's kind of a bit of a crack. So that's one thing I would say about hub companies trying to get lots of points of engagement out of it. To the question is that, yes, to a degree. So if you have free movement between where you've got pressure on your pedals and where your chain is effectively tight, like you've basically got a bar between your front chain ring and your rear cassette, and where it's loose, is that when you're going through rough stuff and you're weighting to unweighting, like in that slop range between the points of engagement, is that yes, that can have an effect on your suspension kinematics, because what you're doing effectively is that if you've got weight on, say, your front foot, and that point of engagement, like you've basically got a bar, like your chain's a tight bar between your chain ring and your rear cassette, is that obviously all your kinematics of your anti-squat and all that are coming into play there when your suspension should be moving freely. And that's why when you run no chain, is that effect of that tight bar is totally eliminated. So your suspension can work nice and free. So a lot of the time why people think that why they claim that the suspension works better with more points of engagement is because that slot point is less. So, and what I should say is, so let's say you've got a couple of degrees, just for an arbitrary number, say you've got 5 degrees of movement before that pressure point comes into play, so your chain goes tight. You imagine you're going through rough stuff, your chain's loose, and you've got 5 degrees of movement, and then you hit that point of pressure and it's applying tension to your chain, and you feel that through your suspension. The more room you've got to move, the higher the velocity of your pedal and more the effective kind of leverage is the wrong word, but the more force that you're able to put on that pedal because it's moved further through its slop range. Whereas if you've got a lot of points of engagement, it can only move so far. Your pedal can only go so fast through no man's land before it'll hit that point of pressure. I'm not sure if I articulated that very well, but that's basically what's going on.
So
I thought it was good.
Yeah. Would you say higher engagement hubs are better for suspension, or is it lower engagement hubs?
Higher. I mean,
controversial.
Well, so this is it kind of is. It's kind of that double-edged sword, because let's say you just had 2 points of engagement. So your pedals could rotate 180 before it would engage. That could, this is such a rabbit hole, because obviously you're still going to have some type of effect, but that could feel okay because you've got like such a big range of movement before that is kind of felt. The short answer is the higher the point of engagement, the better it will, or the less effective you waiting and unweighting through the rough stuff will have an effect.
Okay. Because I think a lot of people think that because you have...
The short answer to his question is the Hydras might feel better than, say, an 18-tooth DT.
I think some people think that magically the rear wheel like locks up with the engagement on a hub and it just stops your suspension working as well. Or there's these weird kind of theories going around.
That's the pedal kickback thing, right?
Yeah. I don't know.
It's funny, like I've had different ratchets in my mountain bikes, the DT ratchets. And I wouldn't say the suspension works. I couldn't say the suspension feels like it works differently, but I do feel the difference in pedal kickback between the two of them.
Okay.
In terms of that notchiness at the feet. Yeah,
and it's that whole, every action has an equal and positive reaction type thing. So if you're going through rough stuff and you've got, like, just say that 5 degrees of slackness, is that if it's got, say, 5 degrees of just no man's land, and then you start to wait, and the pressure and the suspension is under compression, is that it'll want to come back through the no man's land before it hits the next point. So like that sloppiness is what you're going to feel. So it's kind of I mean, the suspension's performance necessarily isn't affected, but what you're going to feel through through the off-on kind of Lockie used a word before, I can't remember what he used, but it's not going to feel as planted, put it that way, because you've got that no man's land where, when you go, like when your suspension compresses, like your real wheel moves up, obviously you feel that through pedal kickback in your feet. But if you've got pressure on your front foot pushing that down, then that no man's land, you're going to feel that through your feet almost as like steps. And the more finite you can make those, the nicer it's going to feel anyway.
That makes sense.
I'm not sure if I'm articulating that very well at all, but in short, yes.
It's a good question. I rate it. I think it's my favorite question.
Same.
All right, finish off with 2 real quick ones. Hey, Mick, how much is that front hub going to cost?
Can't tell that.
And
you need to let me know how to order one. I need to do this off camera.
So I'll give a little bit away. Well, firstly, as people can imagine, making something in Australia that's a very, very custom product that has a lot of different manufacturing steps isn't the cheapest thing. So I'll just air that out. It's it's taken me almost 6 years to actually figure out how to make the product as one literally took 2 weeks, like actually quite easy, but to make it as adjustable and as adaptable as it is has taken years. So the manufacturing processes involved aren't that easy. So what I will say in regards to Lockie's comment just then is the way we'll be doing it is on a pre-order basis. Is straight up, like, I don't have the capital to make 1,000 of these things ready to sell. So we'll be doing them on a pre-order basis, and it'll be a capped limit pre-order, just so I can ensure that that all those orders can be fulfilled in a timely manner.
Sick.
So if you want one, you've got to get in quick when pre-orders actually do drop.
I know we're not talking price, but if I hypothetically had known what they were, whatever that number is, I think they're excellent value for what they are. So as much as you're making it sound scary, I think it's actually a very what's the word? Well priced system.
Value.
Very good value. Yeah, that's what I look for.
And look, and without making it all about a WRP thing, is that the reason that I've designed it kind of the way it is so that it's fully sort of serviceable and replaceable too. So
Cool. Right, I think we'll end it there. It's been a long day. It's been a long time podcasting.
I need to go eat steak. I'm fucking hungry.
Yeah, I need to go lie down and put my arm up and be old. Sick.
I'm going to go to bed so I get an early roadie in the morning.
Yeah, birthday boy.
Yeah, I'm actually trying to do the same. If it's not 4 degrees tomorrow morning, yeah.
It's definitely not. Cool. Thanks so much, guys. It's been a pleasure. I'll try and knock this one out tomorrow so that everyone can wish Mick a happy birthday straight away.
Oh, yeah. Happy birthday.
No, you don't need to.
Sick.
Thanks, guys.
21. Woo!
Yeah.
You can drink in America.
If only I was Benjamin Button.
You'll be racing Masters soon.
Do it.
No, not too soon. That's closing on everyone.
Join us. Right.
No, not for a few more years.
Easy, mate. We'll see you in Masters.
2. Yeah.
Have a good one. Bye.
No worries, guys.
Bye.
Take care. See ya. Bye.
Thanks for listening to that one, guys. I hope you got some useful information out of it. It was an epic episode. I always love sitting down and chatting with these guys, and their insights into mountain biking and the tech is amazing. As usual, thanks again to Pedro's and the guys at Lead Out Sports for sponsoring this episode and the tech talks. And $100 goes to the best question. I'll send that through to Instagram and we'll release the winner on Instagram. So make sure you follow all the pages, like, subscribe, review, tell your mates, tell your mum, tell your nana, and spread the word. Thanks again, and we'll see you next month.